Hot.
And we are live. Good day, everyone in the chat. There's not a lot of you in the chat right now, but today I'm here with the Dog of Sinope. I don't know if you use a different name online, actually.
Will, whatever. You can call me whatever you want. You can call me Susan. I don't care.
Okay, Susan. No, that's just silly. No, but seriously though, I mean, I use Modway. Do you have a name you use? Prefer to use?
You can call me Snoopy. You can call me Will. You can call me whatever you want. I'm cool.
Okay, Sinoopy then. It falls in line with the name you're using in the text. Sinoopy. So I'm today here with Sinoopy, and the topic for today, I was hoping Michael Keller was here, but he didn't want to hurt your ears. Fair enough then. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the issue with the democracy in the Western world, and I'm going to limit it a little bit to Europe, more or less. And even though we're talking about Europe, we're not talking about the UK, for example. But before we start doing that, I'm going to give people a few minutes to drop in online, because apparently we now only have 3 viewers. I lost a viewer. I don't know who left though. Nah, I don't really care that much. Well, it's not true. I do care. And because of that, I need to say this. I started this channel to do live streams away from my main channel. But I've been advised not to do that. Because I don't know. So now I'm not so sure if this channel has a long life. And yes, YouTube is lying to me, John. That wouldn't be the first. But yeah, so maybe, I'm not quite sure yet, maybe this channel will not see as much traffic in the future. Maybe we'll go back to live streaming on Modwayne's main channel. But then again, everyone here is subscribed to my main channel, right? Well, Sinope isn't, but maybe the rest of you are. I'm not quite sure. Are you subscribed to my main channel on YouTube?
I don't know.
No, well, there you have it.
I don't know. I don't pay. Sorry, I don't pay attention to these things.
I don't mind.
Let me just do that.
Don't worry about it. I mean, I'll never be a big YouTuber. Ever since I had this one really big video, YouTube has done everything they can to make sure I'll never have a big video again. That's kind of funny though, because it's a video of more than 2 years ago, and there was a guy who posted last week, who posted a comment last week on the chat under that video, how he really wishes my channel would become big, and I'm like, okay, that's nice. This is a video with 50,000 plus views of a long time ago, and yeah, everything went downhill since.
Oh man.
No, that's not. I like doing what I'm doing, so I should stop whining. Yeah, that's the best word for it.
Well, what you got to do is you got to get a cat. You got to get a cat.
Get a cat?
Or
Why?
a puppy.
Why?
A puppy. Because if you actually, if you look at YouTube, the things that become really popular, it's young women that sing, and it's animals. Mostly.
Well, I've got 2 rabbits. I could make more footage of my rabbits.
If your rabbits are on screen all the time, then that'll help. Yeah.
I can make videos
I'm not
of my
kidding.
rabbits. I mean, they're lazy, and currently they're just laying around. But yeah, I could film my rabbits.
Doesn't matter. You can talk about whatever you want, just as long as the rabbits are on screen. You're fine.
Yeah. And I have to use copyrighted music so that YouTube will start pushing me again, because someone else will make the money off of it. This is a tip I've been given as well. I haven't really done it yet, but I should. You didn't hear that one?
Can you acquire a right to the license to use different music?
Yeah, you can.
I don't think it's expensive.
It is.
Not for just.
Listen, everything more than €1 is expensive, because I'm not making any money here, and I'm not going to invest.
Fair.
But
I mean, in terms of traffic it generates, I don't know if it's economical.
I don't think it is. But this is something someone pointed out to me. Toxic pointed it out to me. Thank you, Toxic. is that once you use copyrighted material, for example, copyrighted music, then the music owner will put a claim on your video. So that every bit of money being made on your video goes to them. But because they do that, it becomes monetized. And because it becomes monetized, it's back in the how do you call that? The routine thingy. Because I'm not monetized. Sorry?
The algorithm.
Yeah, the algorithm. I'm not monetized, so it's very difficult. Hell, even if you type in my full name and the full name of the video, it's still difficult to find the video. Now this is true for bigger channels too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say, oh well, they're only doing it to me. No, they're doing it to everyone, or rather, they're doing it to everyone of a certain political affiliation. But yeah, no, it's funny, and I haven't tried it out yet. But yeah, if that's going to work, maybe I should try doing that as well.
Well, I think that just addressing that whole thing, everyone really does need to kind of become platform neutral, and then there needs to be something where we're using video aggregation services. So I mean, we've gotten very good at doing this with media of late, in far as articles and whatever. So you go to a given website consistently, and they will link newspaper, blog articles, whatever, from around the world on that. So yeah, a good example would be like the Drudge Report or something. And if we start doing that with videos, then people can search on the aggregation service instead of on YouTube. And then the videos can just be hosted wherever, because there's a million different companies that are very happy to host any video, whatever. That's not the problem. The problem is the search and just locating people, and so that runs everything through YouTube's search algorithm. If you're using an aggregation service, then you cut websites like YouTube out of any ability to control that. It's the searching is happening through a trusted third party.
No, I understand what you mean. Mm-hmm. And sure. It's I mean, I have been trying that obviously too. I mean, I'm using Discord and I'm using Minds to try and push certain. But then again, I'm really not that good at the social media stuff. So yeah, it's only mostly me dropping stuff, and I very often don't even reply to what people have to say, especially in Discord. Mm-hmm. On Minds, I always reply, but on Discord, I often don't even reply because I don't see it. Minds is very good at that. I mean, it gives me a message when someone replied to me. But Discord doesn't, and because of that, I sometimes miss it, which is quite annoying.
I got it.
But yeah, I'm not that good with the social media thing, to be honest. Okay, right. Dog of Sinoop was a little bit soft, people. I boosted his signal a little bit. Let me know if it's better, because I can't hear it, and the Dog of Sinoop can't hear it. You guys can, so I'm going to need your feedback on that one. But yeah, no, you're correct though. I mean, this is how YouTube and Twitter went hand in hand, because you could publish your stuff on Twitter and on what all the other websites are, Tumblr and whatnot, and because of that, your YouTube channel would grow. But funny enough, a lot of people that used to use YouTube don't use YouTube that much anymore.
Right.
And
no, as the man said, the internet perceives censorship as damage and routes around it. That's one of the founders of the Electronic Frontier Foundation coined that one, and I think it's true. The consequence of censorship is that it's perceived by the massive users as effectively being a damaged node, and then what people do is they just start avoiding it. and operating in nodes where their communications will not be tampered with.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. No, yeah, that's true. Sorry. It's
Oh.
it's. I want to say it's weird that it happens though, and we were talking about it earlier. I don't know if you were here already. I can't remember. How, for example, now Mark Zuckerberg is talking about how he's not in favor of censoring people on Facebook, even though for the last years he's been doing nothing else. But now he's losing traction on it, and I think we see this happening a lot, and it's the double standards coming from Silicon Valley are big, and we don't seem to be able to break away from it, and they are affecting everything else.
They've got quite a lot of schizophrenia on the issue, because the original ethic of Silicon Valley was very much kind of a libertarian notion. Hey, let everything run, and in part that was self-serving in that they perceived that being as open as possible would drive new traffic to them, and it was early days, and they needed that traffic just to justify themselves. And as they have increased in confidence that they can maintain their user base, they are increasingly being aggressive in imposing arbitrary rules on their systems. But I think what Zuckerberg has perceived is that whilst you can get away with that to a certain extent, depending on how big you are, there is a bleed that takes place over time where you just kind of are just losing, you're just kind of slowly leaking users. And it compounds over time such that, I mean, not only are you leaking those users, you're also not getting new ones. And inevitably that's going to just lead to any one of these systems, no matter how large it is, eventually bleeding to death. And so Zuckerberg has talked about this. It was actually kind of interesting. He thinks that the future of social media is a less open platform which is not to say a censored one, but one where instead of everybody kind of being thrown into one room, where people generate their own networks that they can control, and they don't necessarily allow just anyone else into it. And by doing that, you can keep malicious actors from joining your network and shitting it up, which is kind of like the de facto what goes on in any of the large groups on Facebook or Twitter or what have you. It's too many people in one room. I mean, think about it. It's so obvious if you think about it this way. Imagine you're going to go out for a night on the town to a restaurant. Mm-hmm. Is the restaurant going to be a amalgamation of everybody that lives in the city? Of course not. There's going to be a biker bar where the bikers hang out. There's going to be a young place where young souls are trying to hook up. There's going to be the really nice French restaurant or whatever where the 60-year-old well-to-do couples are going to go to. There's a variety of different interests that are being satisfied in environments that are desirable to different groups. And you can't just jam everybody into one room because it's going to create a general misery. You can't have a bunch of 4-year-olds spazzing out and running around the room and squealing in the place where people are trying to be romantic.
True.
It spoils the atmosphere.
No, that is true. But I wonder if you could see political situations in literally the same way. I doubt that, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. So, no, do you want to have, let's say you're trying to have a discussion about X, whatever it is. Maybe you want to talk about economics, something like that. And something I've found operating on the internet is that almost any time I want to talk about economics, I am invariably yelling at communists.
Yeah.
And it's boring. It's boring. I frankly, I don't want to censor them, but I want to have a discussion that doesn't involve them preaching their dogma at me.
Yeah.
And they've got no particular interest in a rational empirical evaluation of anything.
No, because
It's just a recitation of their book, and that's all they care about.
yeah, but that's because of religion. Reality and religions don't combine.
Sure, certainly, and that's a situation where if you just want to talk about economics and you're tired of yelling at the Marxists, which I frankly am, you might want to say, you know what, I'm just not going to invite them into this circle because I'd actually like to have a substantive discussion that's more productive. And you find the same thing in human society, just in general, regarding academia, business discussions, all kinds. Human organizations are not merely who they allow in, but who they exclude.
Yeah, and that's the topic for tonight. Sorry, go on. No, but go on, because yes, it's the topic for tonight, so I just put it out there. But you finish your story. Or did I interrupt?
No, that's all. Oh no, I'm just saying that it's an essential element of human organization to be defined not merely by who's in but who's out.
Yeah.
And you, you're going to have, like, let's say a crazy person who's, foaming at the mouth and naked and running around in circles, cutting themselves in their own feces and barking at the moon. Is this person going to share a stage with a learned expert in anything? And you could say, well, on some ethical basis, you want to do that, but it's going to make whatever we're doing very unproductive. And the gentleman who has developed this mastery is not going to feel rewarded by having himself placed in an equivalent position to this guy who's just running around in circles, shitting all over himself.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to use this to start talking about the whole Cordon Sanitaire bit, because that's kind of what we wanted to talk about, or what I wanted to talk about. Now, you're correct. People try to organize groups in such a way not only to let people in, but also to make sure people are left out that they don't want in. This is basic in-group, out-group dichotomy. And I love it, for example, that the left keeps pushing how, oh, no, they're so inclusive. No, they're so tolerant. They are by far the worst. Because
right,
they are tolerant of everyone, except for the ones they're not tolerant about. And then they will use the fact that look how tolerant I am, but not for them. They won't see that as, okay, maybe I'm not so tolerant as I claim. No. They will see it as an indication of how bad you are that you're being left out. Well, wait a second. If you're tolerant of everyone and you're not tolerant of me, you're not tolerant of everyone. So it doesn't reflect badly on me, even though that's what they push. But it's the whole Bolshevik mentality. And I keep using that term, and I know some people don't agree with me on that one. But it's the Bolshevik mentality. We are the majority. Our view is the only right view. And everyone agrees with me.
It's any totalitarian belief system is going to do that. So, maybe that's another way of looking at it.
Definitely.
Christianity in the 14th century would not have been open to you wanting to talk about, say, Scientology or something. There's no sense in advocation of Scientology.
They weren't even open to talk about different views within Christianity itself.
Not. I'm just,
Let's be honest. The Protestants and the Catholic had a difficult period.
Absolutely.
But
so the idea is not to silence. The idea is not to say you will have even the guy who's barking at the moon, covered in feces and running around in circles. I don't even want to silence that guy. That's not the point. I'm just, if I want to have a productive discussion, I think I have the right. It's freedom of association, which is an element of freedom of speech, to associate with who I want to associate, not associate with who I don't want to associate. And so I can sit there and talk to people that I think are interesting. And I'm not going to get some crazy person showing up and making it impossible to have a dialogue about anything, which is what happens when you have like a completely open system. I can't restrict it down to where I can have some kind of organization, which doesn't mean that they can't do something elsewhere. Have a party, do whatever you want. But I have to be able to create my own thing, or else how do I talk about something?
True that. And hi there, Paolo. I thought you wouldn't be here today, mate. I'm sorry, totally off topic. No, but you're but you're correct, and it is. It's double because and here is the liberal talking in me, and I don't identify as a liberal. Don't get me wrong, but I do believe in the.
I do.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do believe in the power of the individual. The smallest group out there is the individual. So if anyone is the right to talk about how they are a minority, it's the individual. Yeah, but you're also part of that group. Yeah, but I don't identify with everything they are, so I don't. It's double. Not the point I'm going to, but it's funny to see how the totalitarian does everything they can to make sure that they are both the minority and the one in power. And this is as I said, this is the Bolshevik mentality. I'll keep telling everyone I'm the majority, and I'll drown out everyone who doesn't agree with me.
No, of course. Well, they will not. It's a distinction from what I was saying, where I merely need a place where someone else isn't going to come in and disrupt the discussion in an unproductive way. What they want is no one who disagrees with them to be able to speak anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, this is the doctrine, this is what you're to follow, and if you don't follow this, automatically you're a problem.
Well, yeah, you're not allowed to speak anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not a question of whether you're able to speak where somebody else is trying to do something. If you're not permitted to organize your own thing separately with like-minded people and discuss things without bothering people, you will be invaded and shut down.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things, getting back to Zuckerberg, that was one of the things he was saying was he felt the future of social media was that it had to facilitate that ability to create these little locked communities that people have control and ownership and agency within. And so that, if somebody wants to come in there and screw it up, they've got the ability to just knock them out and say, no, you don't get to be in here. We don't, you're just causing a problem. But that doesn't stop the person who got knocked out from creating their own thing. So they can make their own thing wherever they want, with whomever wants to join it. And that's the freedom. Because just as someone has the right to speak, I don't have the obligation to listen.
No, true.
I have the freedom to ignore people.
Yeah.
And so if somebody is just talking a bunch of nonsense, I'm not obliged to listen to every crazy thing that comes out of their mouth.
Yeah.
I've got other things to do with my life.
But at the same time, and this is where the left or whomever is in power at the moment it is the left, this is where they constantly go wrong. They assume that me not having the obligation to listen means I can take away other people's right to listen. And this is the whole how do you call it? I forgot the words people use for it, but the that you block people from talking, that you stop them from having speeches and whatnot.
Censor, blocklists.
No. Even in events.
Shadow ban.
No. Even in events.
Shadow ban.
That when they are at a venue where they are to talk to people and then they're protesting outside so people can't hear what's being
blacklist.
said. No.
Blacklist.
The real life events. I can't remember the word now. Fucking hell. They did it, for example, to Milo Yiannopoulos when he was. Unstaging.
I'd just say he got blacklisted. He got blacklisted. That's what I heard.
No, well, maybe, but that's not what I meant.
Fair enough.
No, that people blocked them from being on stage.
Oh, no platform.
Yes, no platforming. That's the one. Thank you. So there are actually no platforming people, which isn't the same thing. I mean, you have the right not to want to hear what I have to say, but you do not have the right to stop me from saying it. And this is
absolutely.
And this is what we've seen in European politics for the longest time, because this is what Cordon Sanitaire is. Cordon Sanitaire basically, well, you know what? I'm going to. Do I need to share? No, I'm not going to share Wikipedia here. Sorry. So Cordon Sanitaire once got started as a war move. Yeah, I mean, there's an enemy there, and I want to keep him there. So I'm going to put a defensive force around them. I'll leave one opening, so if they want to go away, there is one way they can go to. But other than that, they're not going to come into my area. So basically, this was what the Cordon Sanitaire was. It's basically preventing enemies from going into your territory. But they are using this in politics now too. They've been doing that for at least 50 years. And it's the same thing. If a political party gains support of people, the powers that be, the political parties that are already in power, refuse to work together with these people. Now, if you look this up on Wikipedia, it'll tell you that it started in the late 1980s, as where it was for the first time called Cordon Sanitaire. But in all fairness, it's way older because they've been doing this, well, in the 50s and 60s. For example, so go on then. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say it's ancient. You know, this notion of preventing people from speaking is ancient.
It is, but to prevent politicians from speaking is. I mean, I'm amazed that it never got more attention, and it's becoming more and more clear, and more people are noticing it, and we're going to go into some nice examples. But it's amazing that it got this far, because, as I said, from the 1980s it got the name, because the Belgian government didn't want to work with a party called Vlaams Blok, which was considered to be a racist group because they were pro-Flemish people and less pro-immigrants. In everything else, they were left, though. I mean, they're for everything left people stand for, except for open borders. And obviously, that's the one thing you can't be different on. I mean, you have to be agreeing with them on everything, but especially open borders, it seems. So the political parties in Belgium, for the longest time, had a agreement with one another not to work with Vlaams Belang. But because of this, Vlaams Belang and other parties started to rise with the same ideology. And they grew. Because you're not saying, I'm not talking to that party. What you're saying is, we will not recognize that people have these ideas in this country. And every time they do that, every single time, those ideas will grow. They will flourish. And they will pop up again. And, I mean, usually it's still doable to deal with it then, but it'll always bring more strife, more unrest. I won't say violence, because that's not always the case, but it does create a society where people are less likely to listen to each other. It creates more polarization.
Well, it certainly generates an amount of rage in a lot of people when they are silenced. It's that small thing. Anyone ever been told to shut up, just in a discussion, just between two people? It's very frequent when that occurs for the person being told to shut up to explode, to get very upset. And when you're looking at this kind of stuff, it's a group in society telling another group in society to shut up. Yeah. And so that's a provocative thing to do, and it's not surprising when people get very upset when you do such a thing. We see that in a one-on-one, and of course it's going to represent itself collectively.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because, for example, if we look at, and I'm going to give a few examples of Cordon Sanitaire, and I'm going to use the Wikipedia page from this, but I know some of them from obviously I'm in the Netherlands, so I know a few of them from the Netherlands. But in Italy, for example, the Communistic Party and the social movement were excluded, especially during the Cold War. But their talking points and their ideas found a lot of traction in Italy. And all of a sudden, they became big. And then they start doing the same thing to what they are now considering right-wing voices. And all of a sudden, after they excluded right-wing voices for a long time, these parties got big. This happened in Italy. This happened in France, where Marie Le Pen, with her, not with her, with his, because the Marie Le Pen we have now is the daughter of, with his nationalistic party, got silenced a lot. And eventually he gave his stick to his daughter. And his daughter was second up in the French presidential election last time. Why? Because the whole concept of what they stand for has been denied. It's not allowed to be there. But a lot of people feel this way. And Macron only won this last time. But there's a big chance that if this would happen again within a week, or within a year probably, he wouldn't, and Marie Le Pen would. So the Cordon Sanitaire has a very opposite effect of what they kind of claim. In the Netherlands, for example, we used to have the Centrum Partij, which was also, it was a partij kind of in line with, I forgot the English person, blah blah Powell. I forgot his first name. Sorry, but yeah, they are kind of nationalistic. It's not that foreigners aren't welcome at all, but we have to keep track of what we're doing. Not too many. The Centrum Partij was like that too, and for a long time,
right?
They were against the open door policies and getting more foreigners to join our country and blah 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 blah. I'm not saying I'm in favor. I'm not saying I'm against. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the narrative. Now the Centrum Partij got blocked. I mean, at the time it wasn't called Cordon Sanitaire, but people didn't allow them to speak. And eventually Janmaat, I mean, they ostracized him and everything. Eventually Janmaat died because people get older and whatnot, and he stopped. And for a long time we didn't have anything like that. But then in 2010, a new party arises from the Liberal Party, the VVD. A member from that party starts his new party, Party for Freedom. And he too starts talking about how it's important to protect the borders and to have a limit of whatever is coming into the country. And they immediately put a Cordon Sanitaire around him. And the very first election after that, he was the second party of the Netherlands.
Right.
Now they could still form a government without them because they still don't want to work with them. And because of that, there's a third, or rather, there's a second party in the Netherlands, which is also considered right-wing, because everything that's not left is considered right. They're not, to be honest. But there's now a third party, or second party, which is Forum for Democratie. And they are the biggest party in the Netherlands when it comes to members and when it comes to provincial politics. In the national politics, they only have 2 seats at this point in time. But if there would be an election within 2 weeks, they would be the first or second party of the Netherlands. And this is what Cordon Sanitaire constantly does. It blocks people from speaking, and then people recognize what's not being allowed to say, and they identify with that, or they feel like, wait a second, this isn't, it's not the best, but it's not bad either. And then they start voting for it. This is, for example, and this is what set it all off to make this stream, because this is what Michael Keller shared with me. This is what happened. And this is the stupidity of the left. Because if we look in Germany, they also have what they consider a right-wing party, Alternative for Deutschland, who also is saying, maybe we should... They're not saying send all foreigners out, but they are saying maybe we shouldn't keep the border open. Maybe we should deal with what we have and get back to a sort of status quo before we start moving on. This is the same as what the PVV said. This is the same as what Forum for Democratie says in the Netherlands.
Well, yeah, what you see kind of pervasively across all these things is there's a disinterest or an objection to any kind of empirical or reasoned response to any of these things. So, for example, if you're saying you're opening the borders because you want to benefit your economy, because there is a labor shortage in certain industries, because there is a problem propping up your healthcare system and your welfare system, which requires that there be some sort of ratio of people that are paying into the system versus people that are net taking out of the system.
Mm-hmm.
If you're saying that you need to open it up because you want to help people that have problems and all sort of stuff, so all these arguments are used, and then if you then take them seriously enough to actually analyze whether any of that is actually occurring, or this is the best way of doing it, or if we should then apply some kind of a filter to the mechanism by which we do it, suddenly there's this immediate revulsion to that, as if it is an impediment to the goal to see whether we're obtaining the goal. Which is just inherently irrational if you take the original statement as being integral and having any authenticity to it, which I don't think it actually does. I think that it's a series of convenient arguments which are thrown out as rhetoric to support a position which has some other motivation. Because if your idea was, for example, to bring in labor to help you in certain industries, well, let's look at Germany. Their industry that they need help with, to the extent that they have deficiencies, is that they need engineers and machinists and so on to participate in their automotive industry. They have a deficit of that. And if your interest was that, you would not be bringing in people from North Africa, for example, which don't have the requisite skills to participate in that industry. They can't help you. And
No,
that's not to say, you shouldn't let in people. The thing is that if you say that the goal is X, it has to have some correlation with the needs of that objective. It's like saying, I am hungry, so I'm going to shovel coal in my mouth. Well, you can't eat coal. It doesn't work. And then so pointing that out, and that's not to say that there's a problem with coal. Coal has its utility, but it's not. You cannot just metabolize it in your digestive tract. That will kill you. So you can't then say, as the German industry, that you need to bring in people from North Africa to assist in the German automotive industry, because they simply don't have the skills. It's not going to work. You have to do something else. Maybe you have to attract skilled labor. Maybe you want to have like a job training program in North Africa, and then graduates of that program then get some kind of like an immigration into Germany at that point. That would actually make some kind of sense, but they're not doing that. And then you could say, oh well, okay, that's just one of my arguments. The other argument is that it's going to prop up the social welfare system, which we have too many old people, not enough young people. It's like, okay, well, for that to function, the people that you're bringing in have to be net payers. If they're net drains on the social welfare system, you're actually making it worse.
Yeah,
you're not making it better.
And this is what's factually happening in Europe. I mean, most of the people coming in are a net drain. Not all, but most, by far. Right. And pointing this out goes against the prevailing narrative.
Right.
And because of that, they try to block these voices with Cordon Sanitaires.
Of course.
Which,
well, I mean, that's one thing. They do all kinds of stuff, but yeah, that's definitely an element.
That's the main element. And funny enough, if we look at it, I mean, we can call them right wing. I don't care. They're not, but we can call them right wing. But what is the main reason that they are growing in popularity? I mean, we saw this in Germany in the AFD. We see this in PVV, and even more so in Forum for Democracy in the Netherlands. Why are they growing in popularity? Not because the people are racist or blah 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 blah. That's the standard Bolshevik defense mechanism. Everyone who disagrees with me is a racist. But because people are recognizing that this is happening, they're recognizing that they're not allowed to talk about it, and they feel it's damaging the society they want to live in. And it's double because, and this is something that happened not too long ago. This happened in Germany, where the AfD supported the Vrije Democraten in, where was it? I think it was in Bayern. I'm not quite sure. I have to look this up real fast. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm really good at this stuff. I had this ready and then I can't find it now. There you have it. I think it was in Bayern. I'm not quite sure. But Germany is kind of like America in its setup. You have states and then you have the republic. And each state has its own its own government, and then there's the overlapping government where Angela Merkel is the boss of. This is not quite precisely how it is, but it's in a way it's a lot like the American system. And in one of the elections of one of the states, I think it's Bayern. I can't remember.
Bavaria?
Bavaria, yeah. Bavaria, it's possible. I'm sorry. I can't find it real fast and I can't remember. But in one of these elections, the AfD was the second biggest party. And the difference between them and the number one was like 3 seats. But there were other parties who were slightly smaller than AfD. Thuringen, thank you, Michael. The other parties were also a little bit smaller, but none of them had enough power to rule by themselves. Yes, read the chat, come on. It's almost as if I'm trying to do something here. Bah! Hi there, Ludicrous, by the way. Fucking hell, you broke my train of thought, Michael. Let me pick this up. No, I mean, the AfD became the second party in Thuringen. And the other parties were smaller. None of the parties were big enough to rule for themselves. This is, by the way, also something V made a video about. And then they're trying to elect a president for that state. And the parties can all elect a member. And everyone is electing their member. But none of them will have a majority vote, because none of the parties are big enough. So AfD didn't choose their own leader as president of Thuringen, but they chose for the leader of the Vrije Democratische Partij, or the Liberals. So the FDP could become the president of that state. But a few days later, because people started complaining that he could only get that position because of the support of the AfD, he stepped down. Yes, the CDU voted for the FDP candidate as well, but it's mostly the AfD that made it possible. And he stepped down because the AfD voted for him. And, I mean, yes, there is the Cordon Sanitaire bit, but they went one step further by saying, okay, you know what, we don't want to work with them, but now they actually gave, in this case AfD, the power to torpedo whatever they want to do, because all that they have to do now is say, I agree. And then all of a sudden they start attacking each other, because the leader of the FDP didn't step down because Alternative for Deutschland supported him. He stepped down because people complained that Alternative for Deutschland supported him. And he didn't want to seem that he agreed with AfD, therefore he stepped down.
Well, what it also does is it gives the people that say that the power to kill anything by simply saying, you sound like X. And that's an overwhelming strategic advantage to give. It's an unacceptable strategic advantage to give any group. You can't let somebody kill anything simply by saying something like that, because then they can control you. They can.
This is basically what they did in Germany, and I'm wondering how the AFD is going to make use of this.
Well, they might not. I mean, they might. I mean, I can see what you're talking about, and that's
Well,
aspirational.
they
But
didn't do it on purpose this time. That's for sure. I mean, they did it to break an impasse, and they wanted to continue. I mean, that's the whole idea with governments where multiple parties have to work together. Coalition governments, you have to work together. So you want to break an impasse to move on. So I assume that they did this not because they wanted to torpedo the next president. They did this to move on. And then all of a sudden, the FDP, which is basically a left party, got attacked by other leftists, all because they had support from what they considered to be a right-wing party. Michael Keller, easy, Motwain. They'll vote for any candidate they don't want because that candidate got voted with AFD vote. Yeah, no, that's what I said. Well, I mean, they didn't do it this time. I don't think AFD purposely torpedoed the FDP party leader. But they've given AFD the power to do this now. Oh no, yeah, no, I agree. It's kind of like people going outside and saying, well, Islam is right about women. It's a spoke in the wrench of the leftist ideologies. Because it shows their inability to even look at what they themselves believe critically.
yes, well, it's also showing their goal is to kind of create as large of a network as they possibly can, and that the network is too large. It's not sustainable. It's a house of cards, and you can see the same problem with the trans movement vis-a-vis feminism. It's a system that's too large. It can't sustain.
Yeah, and hence you get the problem that you, for example, now see in the UK, where trans exclusionary radical feminists, TERFs, are being attacked even by the police because they basically recognize that a man wanting to live as a woman isn't the same as a woman. But saying that, that's you can't say that. That's not allowed. And it's the stupidity of it all. They keep undermining them.
Well, yeah. Well, there's no sincerity. There's no sincerity. There's no integrity. The goal is to make as large of a network as possible, not for the network to mean anything.
And yeah, that's and this is I'm not sure if this happens with right authoritarians. I assume it will, but I don't know. I don't have an example of this, but this is what keeps happening on the left.
I don't know. I mean, so I guess you could try and look at Adolf Hitler or something and
yeah,
see
I'm
if
sorry, but Adolf Hitler wasn't right.
Okay. Well, choose. Do you want to talk about Pinochet? I mean, pick somebody you prefer. I mean, who's a right authoritarian then?
Yeah, that's a difficult thing. I don't know enough about Pinochet because I simply don't. I mean, I know he was anti-communist, but that in itself doesn't make him right.
No, but if you can't name one right authoritarian, that's a problem for you.
Yeah, no, it's difficult for me. I don't know enough about Pinochet, so I can't say he was.
Well, who do you know enough about? Franco? Do you know Franco?
Yeah. Yeah, but again.
So is Franco right? Who's right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know if Franco was right, to be honest. I mean, we say.
Okay, well then, can I propose that we just get away from right and left then?
Okay.
Because I'll be frank. I find them to be very unprofitable terms.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and that's maybe also a little bit my point. Uh, but yeah, okay. So this is a totalitarian movement, and are you going to tell me that this is what Pinochet did? Yeah, you're right. Are you going to tell me this is what Franco did? Yeah, you're right. Though I don't think it's a left-right thing. I think it's an authoritarian thing.
Okay.
But we're not easy to accept that. We like to push the idea, no, well, left is good. Yeah, but wait a second. Hitler wasn't right-wing. I know people like to say this, but...
Well, I don't think right and left are meaningful terms.
No,
so
well,
I don't know if I don't know if I'd even want to use either term, because for one thing, they're relative. You know, right, left, up, down. What the hell does that mean?
yeah,
And
no, I agree.
and of course, it's relative terms are always relative to what, and
Yeah.
that's a terrible way of identifying something, because you know, if I identify a dog, is a dog a relative term? Not really. You know, it's or a cat. You know, is a cat right or left or up or down of a dog? Well, that's a
Yeah,
nonsense concept.
Yeah, no,
So
indeed. Fair point. No,
yeah,
very
so these right and left terms. The other thing is they're subject to the Overton window, in that they get redefined by their relative vulnerability, and thus something that was cited as being one thing at one time without change at all will have its place on the board move. And that makes it extremely difficult to determine what anything is, because all the pieces are floating around.
Yeah.
So so I really, I mean, I don't mean to be obnoxious, but I really don't like relative political terms, because they're extremely vulnerable to redefinition, and I don't think that is helpful to understanding what we're talking about.
No, I agree with you. I agree. Fair point. Fair point.
You were struggling to place things, and I you know, I think it's reasonable that you were struggling, because it's hard to know what the hell you're talking about with these terms.
Well, that's the thing, though, because I mean, when we look at okay, so define left wing. Well, left wing is pro-social programs, pro this, pro that. Okay, was communism a left wing or a right wing thing? Because communism had all those things. But if we look at Russian communism, it was fucking nationalistic. But that part doesn't make the news, because, well, nationalistic means that you're right. Well, that doesn't make sense.
So let's go back to the original notion of right and left, because if we're going to use the terms, I'd like to just freeze them at their inception, because I think they actually they make more sense, and it also denies people the ability to redefine them, which I think is important. So you know, in its original inception, the right wing of the French, what was it, Council, Parliament, whatever the hell that was, Assembly, I think is actually what it was called. The right was, yeah, it was the clergy and the aristocracy on the right, and on the left it was people that were advocating for meritocracy, freedom of speech, against birthrights and you know, privilege, that kind of stuff. And by that definition, the original definition, there really aren't any right-wing people really left. I mean, how many people are actually arguing for a return to aristocracy and a return to theocracy? I think that's not really a concern in the Western world outside of perhaps Islam.
Yeah, indeed.
and you know, the place of that group in the wider in Western society is debatable. But
not really, because in all fairness, if we look at the place of Islam in the Western world, the left has basically made the bed for Islam.
No, well, yeah, but see, I don't. It's not the left, though.
Well,
it's not the left.
Fair enough.
No.
Fair enough. We're not going to use left and right. Fair enough.
Well, if you're going to use it, use the original meaning. But the thing is that what we're really talking about here is Marxist-aligned ethics.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it is, because that isn't left. I mean, my country, the United States of America, was founded along leftist principles. But it was original left. It was the correct meaning of the term. So it's talking about move away from aristocracy and the moral right of the clergy to define right and wrong. It's moving towards democracy. It's moving towards liberation of individuals to have agency in their society.
Hmm.
Um, that equality before the law. That's you said you weren't a liberal before, and I said I was. You said okay, but what I meant by that was what I just said there. That's what I mean by liberal, because
Hmm.
that's the actual original meaning.
Yeah, and
The
I know. I just it's not that I'm not for equality in for the law, but
Of course not.
I also see how it can be corrupted, and it always has been corrupted.
Well,
I'm all in
I don't.
favor.
No. I mean, the Marxists corrupt everything.
Well, yeah,
They subvert everything. So they come to my country. They come into a majority African American community, and they say, I will help you. I will raise you up, and I will help you overcome generations of oppression and so on. Right, but they're not actually interested in any of that.
no, they're
Their
actually,
interest instead is power.
yeah,
And they have no interest in actually helping these groups. They have an interest in draining them
yeah,
of all sympathy and political agency that they have in the society and appropriating that, misappropriating it towards the interests of their political ideology. And then they go on and they do the same thing with the environmental movement. They say, oh, capitalism is bad for the environment, ignoring that, of course, communism is if anything worse for the environment. Let's look at China and the Soviet Union and ask ourselves what their environmental record was. Capitalism, by contrast, is dramatically better for the
yeah,
environment than these things are, and they have no particular interest in that either, because immediately when funds are dispensed, does it go to helping the environment? No, it goes to political activists and political campaigns and organizations that spend almost all their money increasing their power, not on cleaning up the environment. The money, almost none of the money, goes to cleaning up oil spills, planting trees, facilitating the saving of endangered species. Almost none of the money goes to that. It's going to fancy parties in
uh-huh,
Switzerland and whatever, and,
yeah,
and, and
to
private jets.
establish the power of the party.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's for power. It's also for for a lavish lifestyle, and it's this constant misappropriation. They go from thing to thing to thing, and once they're actually they've done it with the LGBT LMNQ groups, which itself is a tell as to what you've got, because what you've got is a dozen different unaffiliated groups with different interests. The interests of homosexual women are not exactly the same interests of homosexual men, and the interests of trans people are distinct from the interests of homosexual men and homosexual women. Conflating all of these under a single banner is a political expedient to draw power out of an aggregated group of people, and pool it where it's desired in one great big pot, where it can be used as a hammer blow to further increase power against people that are resisting. And you can also see the tell in a lot of this stuff, because what are people referred to in this day and age when they resist what is called, air quote, the left? Well, they're called reactionaries, which is
Yeah,
which is an interesting term, because that is what Marxists call people that resist Marxism.
yeah.
It's their term, and it doesn't have meaning
Just
politically outside of that context.
just like what was it? Racist is a Bolshevik term. No, not a Bolshevik. A Tolstoy term. But it's
Well,
still, I
so
think he
like
was Bolshevik at the
Scientologists,
time, though.
right? And Scientologists have a term for people that resist Scientology. Just to draw a connection, they call them, I think, suppressives. So if you hear anybody referred to as a suppressive, it generally means that you're talking to Scientologists. And by the same token, when you hear somebody talking about reactionaries, you're generally what that generally means is you're listening to Marxists.
Hmm.
And and what they have done, and I mean many people have written about this. It's hardly a novel idea. I think this is relatively, I don't know, like quasi mainstream at this point. Um, is that there has been a conflation by Marxists with between their class warfare concept and all these sort of social justice issues. That one becomes an analog to the other, um, and that allows them to do their original aspiration of class warfare, but doing it in the guise of race and gender and the environment and an endless series of things. They'll cobble anything to their banner that they possibly can, but none of
Yeah.
it is served authentically or with an interest of actually serving the interests of whatever these groups are. It's merely an expedient to increase power to serve the long-standing agenda.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because, especially if we look at the environmental movement. I mean, it's a derogatory term, I know, but we've been calling a lot of, well, the nickname of a lot of these environmentalists has been for a long time, um, watermelon.
Okay.
And,
I don't know what that means.
well, they're green on the outside, but they're red on the inside.
Ah, okay, okay, I gotcha. I gotcha. Sure, sure.
And it makes sense if you know it. A lot of people say, "Oh, I didn't know that one," but once you hear it, it's like, boom, yeah, there you go.
Hmm.
And yes,
Sure, sure.
toxic.
No,
This guy
I
is
get it.
pretty smart. I don't always let anyone on. Sometimes I'm a little bit more. Sorry. No, but yeah, I agree. Toxic. He is a smart dude. That's why he's here. So, but no, I mean, it's and this is something, and we call it the left by lack of better descriptive. Um, but they are always authoritarian, and everything they get into, as you said yourself, everything they get into, they don't get in because they care. They get
Hmm.
in because they want the power.
Sure. And you can see what happens the instant that the group has been drained of the social capital that attracted the Marxists to them in the first place.
Hmm.
They're discarded like an old toothpaste tube. They're thrown to the side of the road like a used up prostitute.
Yeah, because they no
You know,
longer serve a
shivering and
purpose.
naked in the cold. No, they've got nothing.
Yeah.
And so they had their fun with them, and now that they're no longer to serve that purpose anymore, they're discarded. So you can see this most clearly with the blue collar factory workers in the United States who have an interest in protecting their union factory jobs, which requires heavy industry to occur.
Hmm.
A certain amount of carbon emissions are going to result from that. And it's being suggested that they're going to be replaced with green jobs, which of course ignores the fact that everything with this green initiative presumes exporting all the pollution to China, and then pretending it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's basically it's carbon credit accounting fraud,
Yeah.
where what you do is you externalize your carbon emitting industry, and then you import the product from that industry and pretend that you're not making those emissions anymore. And so then that allows you to pretend on your local books, like, look at how environmentally friendly and green we are, when in fact you're if anything worse.
Yeah.
But you facilitate. So in my state of California, one of the things we've done, we've gone beyond this. We have shut down nuclear power plants and fossil fuel emitting power plants. And then what we've done is we've contracted with coal fired and otherwise power plants in Arizona, Nevada, and even Mexico. And then we
Yeah.
import that electricity over electrical wires. But when we do so, that power is treated by these carbon credit systems as being carbon neutral power, even though
It's not.
it's one atmosphere, and the power is clearly coming from somewhere, and the power plant it is coming from is literally a coal-fired power plant.
Yeah, it's kind of
Um,
funny when we're talking about energy. It's really funny that they keep pushing the idea that we need to be CO2 neutral, which to me is
mhm.
a farce in itself. But we're
Yeah,
not allowed to do it with nuclear power. But there's
no,
only one CO2 neutral power source that we have. Literally, there is only one CO2 power source that we have, and
sure.
that is nuclear, because none of the others are CO2 neutral. I mean, they like to think it is, but well, I mean, you could argue wind and solar are CO2 neutral because you don't calculate in the amount of CO2 needed to build it, which you also don't do with a nuclear plant because obviously you need a lot of concrete, which also releases lots of CO2. But even if you, well, if you would count the initial CO2 cost, so the building CO2 cost, the only viable CO2 neutral output out there is nuclear. Wind and solar
Hmm.
are more damaging than coal. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, that doesn't suit the narrative, which is
Certainly not.
which is weird. Anyway, I interrupted you. It seems. I'm sorry.
No, 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 not at all. And it gets worse than that still because we had a kind of a hilarious incident in California a couple of years back. The Chevron Oil Company, as a PR thing, uh, they're the largest oil company in California, so forgive them for trying to be PC. They've got to kind of survive in the environment they live in.
Uh-huh.
They embarked on an enormous solar power energy project. Wanted to build a big solar panel farm, which they connect to the municipal grid, and it would just be a bunch of solar power that would dump into the California electrical grid and
Oops.
and and mitigate some amount of carbon emissions.
Yeah,
Um,
I already know what's
it
going to
was
happen next.
it was protested very heavily by environmental groups because it was interfering with the habitat of desert tortoises. So they built it out in the middle of the desert where there's not a whole lot out there but tumbleweeds. And there were apparently a total of two tortoises were resident in this huge swath of land where the thing was being built. And the two tortoises were provided by the Chevron Corporation, guys who were building this solar power facility. They said, well, these tortoises live here, and it's only right that because we're gobbling up a bunch of their land that we give them a nice little home.
Yeah.
So what they did was they built two or maybe more, but at least two of these turtle homes, which
Mm-hmm.
the turtles were in no sense obliged to remain within. So there's like a door in the front where a turtle could go in and out if it wants to. And within the turtle home, there was a fountain of clean water that was continuously circulating,
Mm-hmm.
and then daily provided lettuce and melons. They talked to experts on tortoises, what's good food to feed a tortoise. Now these tortoises in their natural habitat are
Yeah.
mostly kind of munching on cactus and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
So it would have
so
been a great upgrade for them.
they have never seen a melon in their life. Can you imagine being a desert tortoise and being given a cantaloupe?
Yeah.
And these animals, they live a long time. So these tortoises would have, probably been 30 or 40 years old. They've been kind of slowly walking around in this desert, and so they've got a dry, a cool place with water and cantaloupe provided daily to them. And this was, there's two of the damn things. And so the Chevron Corporation set that up, which is a nice thing. They didn't have to do that. They did that because they wanted to be nice and it was a cute thing and it didn't cost anything really.
Yeah.
So they set that up, and the people who are actually working at the facility, these are kind of like pets. They just kind of take care of them, and they got names and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Not that the turtle cares, but so you're setting this whole thing up, and the environmentalists, quote environmentalists,
Yeah,
they
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 go
came
crazy.
in and they were furious about this destruction of wild desert tortoise habitat. And the thing is, if I can't build a fucking solar power facility in the middle of the desert, where can I build it?
Yeah.
There's no, and of course, these sort of facilities prop up elsewhere, but when they are facilitated by their political allies, there's no protest. But when it's their political opposition, oh boy, suddenly we have a problem.
Yeah, but that's
So, and that demonstrates.
that's I wanted to say, it's not about what you're doing. It's
Uh-huh.
about who you
That's
are.
right.
Because
Uh-huh.
the watermelons don't care about the environment. They don't want you to give a solution. They want you
No.
to give them power.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the greatest example of that is one of the main issues that environmentalists claim to have, other than CO2, is the plastic in the water. It's a huge problem. It's such a huge problem that in California,
Right.
you're no longer allowed to use plastic straws.
Sure.
Because that's going to make a big difference.
Which is absurd.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's the funny thing with that. So then the question that is politically incorrect to ask this question is: what portion of California consumed plastic makes its way into the oceans?
Yeah.
And the reality is,
they did calculate that. Yeah.
It's basically zero. It's basically zero.
0.002%. And out of that 0.02%, plastic straws are a thousandth of that, and that's what they legislate. I'm seriously.
Absolutely.
And the funny thing is, I can't stop laughing when I think about this. So we had plastic straws wrapped individually in paper.
Yeah.
And that was bad. So now we have paper straws wrapped individually in plastic.
Yeah, of course.
What's the difference, for fuck's sake?
Of course.
It's not diminishing plastic. It's not diminishing anything.
No.
It's just a law to make a law.
It's virtue signaling for morons.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's I guess that's probably inaccurate and harsh. It's not even really that they're actually stupid. It's that they're not paying attention. There's a mental process of just sort of generalized skepticism and interrogation in their mind that isn't occurring. So somebody tells you Bigfoot is real. You know, he's real. He's green and he eats porcupines. And you say something like that, and there's a portion of the population for whatever reason that just allows that into their mind as a truth with no investigation.
Yeah.
And they could be otherwise intelligent, educated people, but
could be.
There is this kind of window in their mind where things just pass directly into the fact portion of their brain with no with no check at all. I mean, that's where we need a wall. That's where we need border checks around our own minds a little bit. I mean, just a little something so that any old nonsense doesn't find its way into this notion of fact. Otherwise, we're going to believe in dragons and stuff. It's crazy.
What, you mean dragons aren't real?
Exactly.
No, but it's dangerously true, and it's funny that we as in a general term, because you're not you and me, but in the Western world, we are letting them get away with this.
Oh yeah,
we're letting them get away with the most stupid of things, and I mean California being a great example of that. We keep voting them in power, and I don't understand why.
That's actually perhaps a little bit more nefarious. I don't know. Probably none of you fellows have been following this, but the Californian voting system has actually been recently subverted. So one of the things, to a greater extent than it ever was before. And one of the things that occurred in the last election was political activists were going door to door in neighborhoods, knock, knock, knock. Hello, sir. Are you registered to vote? And if they said no, they would say, well, we can register you to vote right now.
Yeah, and then they
And you
would
say,
steal their vote.
well, no, no. So registration to vote is not casting of a vote. It's merely entering yourself into the system as someone who can vote.
Yeah.
So knock, knock, knock. That occurs. That paperwork is filed, and then the new thing, because that actually isn't new. That's been going on for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
The new thing was, as soon as you had completed that process, they would then say, would you like to cast your ballot now? I have an absentee voting ballot right now.
Yeah.
That you can cast, and that you can cast your vote now, and I will take your ballot that you've just cast right now after I've just registered you,
Mm-hmm.
and I will then file that wherever.
Yeah.
Now, that creates a series of problems. So first off, it means that I can control to a certain extent who is going to vote simply by talking to you.
Yep.
I can figure out maybe what your attitudes on things are.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that goes beyond demographics. Certain neighborhoods in town are going to vote one way or the other, just statistically. But it goes beyond that, because if I determine that you probably voted the wrong way, the way I don't want you to vote, I can lose your vote. I'm putting these in a big box. If I don't turn them in, then it's as if you never cast that vote, and you're not going to show up to the poll because you figure you already voted. And also, it's a problem for you to vote again, because if you gave him that ballot and then you go to vote and he turns in your ballot, then that could be counted as double voting, and you can actually be held criminally liable for that.
Yeah. Well, only if you vote for the Republicans, not if you vote for the Democrats.
It's a problem. So
Yeah.
so that's an issue as well. But then it becomes even worse, because let's say that the person collecting the vote is true scum. And what they do is they run around doing this, and they collect, let's say they get 100 people to vote. Just this one guy walking around doing that for the day. And then what he does is he takes those 100 votes, doesn't open them, doesn't look at them, takes them all, throws them all away, and then fills out 100 forms voting for whomever he wants, and files those. Now, how would you know that he had done that?
Yeah, you wouldn't.
There's no mechanism to do that. And he can take the information from the filed voting forms to fill out the other ones, at least insofar as identification. And this is what occurred in the last California election. This was considered to be legitimate. Now, that this is not to say that any given person did this. It's merely to point out that they could have done it, and there's no way to know whether they did or they didn't.
No, there were ways to know, because they have, and this is the worst part. There were certain situations where they knew this happened, and not even only in a negative way, but there were people who did this in positive ways. I think I can't remember now because it's a few years ago, but there was a big hubbub about a guy handing in votes from a Latino community within a certain area, but they voted Republican. And the voting place, and I think this was in California, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
the place where he wanted to hand them in, they didn't allow him to hand them in.
Right.
Because he wasn't blah blah blah. I don't know what it was. Something about how he couldn't prove where he got the votes from or something. Which is understandable, but it's the same technique as they are doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
so it's a big problem.
Yeah, and this is the problem what we're seeing with, I know this is the wrong word, but I'm going to use the word left again. This is a problem we see with the left.
You got to break it.
Well, it's one rule for you.
You got to break it.
We do. And I don't know.
You have to get out of that.
I don't know what name we're going to use though.
I mean, there's some flavor of Marxist. We know that. I mean, one of the terms I've been using.
Okay, go on.
Here's the term I've actually been using. Yeah, I call them the ideology which cannot be named. I go with
Okay.
that one because whenever you try and identify them, they say, "Oh, you can't use that term." So I'm just going to call them because they'll object to leftist, right? They'll object to leftists, they'll object to Marxists, they'll object to socialists, they'll object to democratic socialists. It's this never-ending kaleidoscope of nonsense. So I just call them the ideology which cannot be named.
Yeah, I can understand that.
That's fine.
Yeah. Not sure if I would use that one. It's too long. But yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. And it's
Well, you just call it the unnameables. You just call them the unnameables. I mean, like short
the unmentionables.
yeah. According to unmentionable philosophy or ideology.
No, but that's another thing. I mean, they all claim that they don't like it. They're socialist, and some will call themselves Marxist. But the funny thing is, if you actually read Marx was against the authoritarian bit. So there isn't.
No, he wasn't. See, this is where you get into the Hegelian philosophy, and I recommend that anybody who wants to really understand how twisted up and crazy Marxism is, read a little Hegelian philosophy, because what's that?
Yeah, go on. I'm listening.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So one of the things you run into with Hegelian philosophy is things that are contradictions are cited as truths. So one of the core notions of Hegelian philosophy is that there is a unity between ignorance and knowledge, that they are the same thing. That there is that unities are that opposites are the same is an element. Now, that's rational. Up is not the same as down.
Yeah.
But if you create a system where that occurs, it allows divisions by zero. You can do you can make illogical arguments and sustain them within the paradigm of that philosophical structure. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why Marx was attracted to Hegelian philosophy. So the notion, so you see this all the time. So one of the things that he talks about is creating the dictatorship of the proletariat.
Yeah.
Now, you can't tell me he is anti-authoritarian when he wants to create a dictatorship of anything.
No. He was, but
no.
It's kind of like the idea what Sanders is pushing. Yeah, no, it's democratic socialism. Yeah, once they're in power, it's totalitarian. But it's the part of getting in power. And in all fairness, from what I understood from Marx, is that at the end of his life, he actually spoke out about the concept of Marxism. He wasn't in favor of what we now consider Marxism.
Well, yeah, because he saw a deification to a certain extent in the whole thing. But the thing is that there's a quasi-mystical element to him. So when you're dealing with Hegel, he's actually been associated with the tradition of Western mysticism. What the hell is that? Shit. No, the oh God, Hermeticism. Hegel has been associated with Hermeticism, in that you can see manners of speech and processing arguments, which is similar to the Hermetic tradition, and so by the transitive property, you then start to get that sort of stuff bleeding into Marx. So there's a strong strain of mysticism in it all. You have to appreciate, and it's like, have you ever listened to Eastern mysticism, like the kind of stuff you hear in kung fu movies, where they talk about how the only way to be strong is to be as liquid as water. There's this kind of weird kind of Buddhist union of incompatible concepts, and it's an element of psychology. If I want you to believe something that's crazy, what I do is I tell you something that's impossible and assert its truth. And that creates a confusion in your mind, and that confusion opens the doors of skepticism. in your mind, and then I can then pour all my cultist nonsense right into that hole, and so it's an element of mystic indoctrination is to throw out incompatible concepts, assert that there's a unity between them, create that confusion. The confusion in your mind psychologically reduces the ability of the filters that in your mind to be able to keep nonsense out because you've become confused. And in that confusion, you lower the standard of truth, simply reaching for anything that kind of centers you, and then through that they then start pushing something on you to try to indoctrinate you. It's just exploiting, like mentalists do this all the time, or cult leaders. It's so built into the ideology. So when you say Marx did or didn't do certain things, it's very important that you understand which things, because he would also say he was anti-religion.
Yeah.
But that's an inaccuracy as well, because he's trying to actually create a new religion.
Yeah. But that
he would say, Carrie.
But yes, he was trying to create a new religion, not just a new religion, but a new religion. But not as in a God sort of religion, more like an ideology, philosophy religion. Not unlike, for example.
What's the difference?
There isn't one really, but people like to think there is.
So, right. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. See, all the differences which aren't real don't exist.
Yeah.
It's just an idea that's wrong in your head.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing my best.
And the thing with Hermes, mythologically speaking, obviously he was more or less the messenger of the gods and whatnot. But, and this is a way people don't really look at him. He's also considered the trader, and not traitor, but trader with a D. Sorry, my pronunciation may have been a little bit.
Gotcha.
But he
commerce.
Sorry, commerce. Yeah, commerce.
Commerce.
And he was also because of that. I mean, he wasn't only fast; he could also be seen. Well, no, that's not really true. In the Greek mythology, he wasn't really seen as a trickster, but he was someone who could try to make reality look different than it is. Let's put it like that. It's kind of double.
Well, I mean, so you appreciate what I'm talking.
Yeah, no, I do.
Are you familiar with the concept of hermetic magic? Are you familiar with, like, there's a whole mystic tradition behind this stuff. It's sort of this long-standing quasi-philosophical pagan thing that has been running through Western society, at least since the Middle Ages, and allegedly all the way back to Egypt. So it's at least as old as the Middle Ages, and possibly quite a bit older. That there are things that are drawn from, like the whole thing with astrology is interlinked with this. Alchemy is interlinked with this. Theurgy, another one of these little things. It's all this old stuff, and I'm not asserting it as being meaningful, but the point is that is a mystic tradition that was in part associated with Hegel, and Hegel was an inspiration and an intellectual brain trust for a lot of the stuff that Marx did. Not so much in his aspirations, but in the manner in which Marx would go about his ideas. So you're familiar with, you've heard of the Marxist dialectic, which is just a rebranding the Hegelian dialectic. And so you have
wait. Because I may have heard from it, but let's assume that someone who's listening hasn't. So clarify, or would you rather I do?
You can if you like.
Go ahead. I don't want to take over from you. So by all means,
if you like, I'm not. I don't care. Okay. So to the extent I understand, correct me if I'm wrong. The Hegelian dialectic, in contrast to the classic Greek dialectic, was one in which you had a formalized set of obligations where you had to make certain statements of certain kinds in a certain sequence, and then at the completion of that, the other party would basically do the same thing, and then over time, back and forth, there would supposedly be some convergence of these two positions over time. Um, the Greek dialectic is more or less actually what we're doing right now, which is just two assholes talking to each other. That's all the Greek dialectic is. It's two people going back and forth, maybe disagreeing here and there, but it's mostly just two people talking. Um, and the Marxist dialectic is just the Hegelian dialectic, but within the framework of Marxism.
Yeah, it's and maybe I understood this wrong, so maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. But how I understood it is not only as in what is being said, but to say something and to try people to understand differently what you said and not correct them when they do.
Uh-huh.
But then when they attack you on it, then you can say, yeah, but that's not what I said. You understood me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
This is also how I understood it. For example, and this is a silly joke, but this is how I understood it. You can talk to people talking about how you have 4 fingers on your left hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then people feel sorry for you. I'm sorry. Oh, what happened to your 5th finger? Nothing.
Uh-huh.
I still have my 5th finger. At no point in time did I say I didn't have my 5th finger.
Uh-huh.
But you assert that I don't because I didn't mention it.
Uh-huh.
And this is a very how do you call it, direct example. But to me, this is what Hegelian dialectic often was. It's not only what is being said, but what is not being said. And then what you want to do is you want to make people believe in the bit that's not being said. And then when they act on it, it's in your favor. And when they call you out on it, then you can say, well, but that's not what I said.
Yeah, so as Real Raven says, it sounds like sophistry. And it facilitates it in a couple ways. First off, it discourages contradiction and challenging of people's positions.
Yeah.
Which is one of the primary ways you control sophistry. So if somebody speaks some total nonsense like "I am a dragon" in a classic Greek dialectic, which is just two people talking to each other, the other guy can say, "You're full of shit. There's no way. What are you talking about? You're an idiot." Yeah, that's fine. You could literally say that. That's acceptable in a Greek dialectic. You could, like, it doesn't matter. But in a Hegelian dialectic, it's this drawn-out thing. It takes forever. And the other thing you have to appreciate is that a lot of what Hegel himself was attempting to do was to prove that God exists, like logically. And I'm not attacking anyone's faith or belief in whatever the deity. But it's a problem when you say God exists and I have the logical proof of that. And then when you ask them okay, show me the proof, they're like, okay, well, I'm going to take you through this Alice in Wonderland maze of illogic, and at no point are you allowed to complain.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you don't get to do that. You can't say you've got logical evidence and then be really irrational 7 seconds later. And that's what it does. So it was basically it was an attempt by late Christian apologists to fend off what they felt was an encroachment, an existential encroachment on their religion in the form of skepticism and materialism and so on, by creating this system of logic that they could use as a firewall against that kind of stuff. And it didn't work demonstrably, but it was then appropriated by the Marxists, who ironically then used it to destroy the Christians.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a weapon to protect their religion, and it became a weapon to destroy it.
Yeah, because in the end, it's not about what you believe or what you think. It's what we allow you to believe or think. And
Yeah, no, yeah. So they came up with something really, really, really woo woo. It's very hokey, uh, and it's very confusing. And one of the things that is a vulnerability in the human mind is that if you confuse us, we're inclined to believe bullshit.
yeah, again, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. Again,
Yes.
these are simple sayings, but
Hmm.
they have a basis in reality. This is again
Of
the
course.
example of okay, maybe it's sophistry, fair enough, but this is again
Uh-huh.
the example of how I can talk about how I have 4 fingers. Now it's important
Uh-huh.
that you make a difference. It's how I have 4 fingers. I don't have only 4 fingers, because once I say I have only 4 fingers, I define it. But when I say four
Right.
fingers, I leave myself an opening to um, how do you call it? Weasel around it.
Sure. Right.
I
Because you
think
didn't say
weaseling.
that you didn't have five. You said you have four.
Yeah,
Sure. I mean, I have one finger and two fingers. I didn't say I only have one finger.
yeah. And
Yeah. Of
this is
course.
and this is something that yeah. I'm sorry. I'm going to use the left anyway. I'm sorry. This is what left wing ideologues keep doing. They keep posing something without actually saying
Uh-huh.
something. And then
Unmentionable
yeah,
ideologues.
fair enough.
And
They keep posing something without saying something. And if you don't call them
Uh-huh.
out, you start to accept this as the truth, because this is how our brain works. But if you do call them out, you have nothing to call them out on, because they're not really saying anything.
Well, they are. They are. They're gonna play word games.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if they truly were not saying anything, then there would be no information loading. There'd be no consequence of the indoctrination. It would all turn into white noise. And as it clearly doesn't, as there is a buildup of belief that kind of goes in a given direction from their influence, there's clearly information in that. And so what they want to do is they want to make it impossible to argue against it. They're also, I mean, here's the other thing: they're trans, not religious, because they don't identify as religious. That's
Yeah.
what they are. They're
No, that's a
trans,
good description. Yeah.
they're trans atheists.
Yeah.
I identify as an atheist. Well, you've got a dick, so I don't know what to tell you. And so it's you can't allow people to self-identify as if that defines reality. If I self-identify as the Queen of France, does that mean I get to live in the palace? No.
Yeah, fair
I mean,
example.
that's silly. We are not merely what we identify ourselves as, but
No,
what other people perceive us as.
Yeah, that's the worst thing. And me working as a social therapist and all that, you don't have the right to identify yourself. And this is something that people kind of don't understand. Yeah, but I am who I am. Fair enough, but you don't have the right to identify yourself. Other people identify you. You are you. Whether you agree with that identification or not, says something about you and the people you hang around with. But you do not get to
Sure.
define how other people see you. And this is something
I had a
that...
buddy who's. Sorry, carry on.
No, go on.
Oh, come on. Wait, finish. I feel bad.
No, but I mean, basically what I was going to say, you don't get to define who you are. Other people get to define who you are.
Yeah.
And that you might not like it, well, fair enough. But that says something about who you are. So if you don't like a certain thing, if you don't like the fact that people call you a long-haired freak, then either stop being a freak or stop being long-haired.
Sure.
That's the
You
power you
control-
have. You can't say you're not allowed to say this. Or you can say it, which means that they'll probably say something like, okay, you're no longer a long-hair freak, you're a long-hair authoritarian freak. But they won't say it in front of you.
Well, you control what other people think, and that's not a moral or ethical principle. That's reality.
Oh yeah, no, true.
Reality. I don't care what your ideology is. I don't care what your morality is. Whatever it is, it's something you cannot control. They have their ability to think. I had a buddy who had a cat, and his cat thought it was a dog. The cat straight up thought it was a dog. It played fetch. They would go to the park. The cat would like run around him the entire time, and it wouldn't run off. It would chase birds and stuff, but it would chase birds like a dog does. It wasn't hunting them. It was just like, oh, hey, look, there's something moving, and it would kind of chase, and it would come bounding back to my right. It was in all sense, as far as its behavior, it was a stupid dog.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a cat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it thinks it is. It's kind of funny that it thinks it's a dog.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, the whole idea that it thinks it is something that's relatively new. Because why would it think it's a dog? No, maybe it just likes to play like this. It's the same thing. We've had tomboys or effeminate men for as long as history goes back. But they didn't start calling themselves trans till the 1960s. So what changed? Well, the narrative changed.
Sure.
Because
I mean, here's the other thing that we miss with the whole trans thing. Have you seen those people that mutilate their bodies with like they like put horns in their head? They tattoo their bodies. All that stuff. So I mean, what you're looking at there is body image dysphoria.
Yeah, it's even worse because it's not just people who put horns in their head to make it look like. There are people who are actually amputating or making sure that their body parts are being amputated because they don't feel that it's who they are. So they bind off their hand till it's dead and then it has to be amputated. Because that's who they are. I not too long ago read a story about a woman who put acid in her eyes because she identified as being blind. I'm sorry. I mean, these people have psychological illnesses. This is not something to celebrate, to be proud of. But yeah, the narrative obviously is that it's a good thing.
And one of the really bizarre kind of irrationalisms of people's interpretation of this is that they don't appreciate how plastic the delusion is to the environment. There's this notion that it's a biological attachment to XYZ, but you can see that people identify as fictional creatures. You know, like I believe that I'm a dragon or something. And
elf. Elf is quite common.
Or an elf. Sure, and whatever it is, it's something that can't possibly be genetically encoded. That has to be some level of cultural loading that they are attaching to. Yeah. And if that happens in that case, how do you separate the person who thinks he's a dragon from the person that thinks that the guy with the dick who thinks he's a woman? And then of course you run into the other problem where there's a rationalism between feminists and trans people, in that the feminists will argue that gender is a social construct, and which you can argue that that's whatever, but then you'll get the trans people saying that gender is biological.
Well, and they're both correct, but they're both correct for different reasons. Because gender as a social construct is true in as far as that language is a social construct. So the word gender is a social construct. But what it describes isn't. And that definition, we've lost the definition of that. Because yes, it's true that language is a social construct, but whatever a word describes isn't a social construct. It's a biological concept. It's the same thing as a chair. A chair, the word chair, is a social construct. Now, a chair in itself is socially constructed as insofar that it's been made by men, but you can sit on a whole slew of different chairs, and we still call all of these different things chair, because the word chair is the social construct. We could call these things bark, if we would still use it in the same way as we would use a chair. The name of the thing doesn't change the thing.
Yeah, as Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet.
Yeah.
Right.
So the word rose is a social construct. The rose in itself isn't. It's a biological thing.
Sure. I mean, I can if I label a rock a cheesecake and then hand it to you and say, "Would you like a piece of cheesecake?" You're going to tell me to go fuck myself. You're not going to eat the rock I've determined to call a cheesecake.
Yeah, indeed.
That's
true. So cheesecake, the word is a social construct because socially we've constructed the meaning of the word.
Well, look, the cheesecake itself is a social construct because it's a product of a recipe which comes from a culinary tradition. But here's the more interesting thing. Okay, so an airplane is an engineering construct. It's a product of well over 100 years of engineering science in aerodynamics and materials science, all kinds of stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But the airplane itself has to interact with natural forces. So you can't make an airplane look like anything and have it work. It's got to have lifting bodies. It has to have a power to weight ratio. There's a whole things that have to a bunch of things. The avionics have to work properly for it to control itself, or it's going to crash immediately. There's a whole bunch of things that go into that to make that work properly.
And none of them are more important than the others. You have to have all of it.
There's an existential need for it to follow these rules sufficiently enough for it to function properly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is really kind of pernicious in a lot of, because the social construct thing is actually, again, it's a Marxist argument against normative social standards, wherein one says, well, there's a reason why we have money and markets and we have power structures that work in certain ways and whatever. Mm-hmm. And Marxists will say, well, none of that matters because they're all social constructs. Well, by the same logic, then you would look at the airplane and you would say that is just an engineering construct, which no one would argue with. They'd say, well, of course it's an engineering construct, it's an airplane. But that doesn't mean that the design of the plane is entirely arbitrary, because the plane has to be designed a certain way to be able to function. And by that same token, when you're designing social constructs that operate within the context of human beings, the logistics of our societies, the needs of human beings for food and shelter and security, you have to design these social constructs such that they function properly or they will not survive. Yeah. So when you're looking at a human social construct which has persisted for hundreds, thousands of years, well, that's like an airplane flying a really long distance, which demonstrates a certain level of competence. Any airplane can make it at least a couple feet. Yeah. Maybe, and it's basically how far you throw the fucking thing. So,
well, that's what flying is. It's controlled falling, isn't it?
Well, sure, but you can take something. You can take a rolled up piece of paper, throw it hard enough, and it'll go quite a ways. Now, would I call that an airplane? No.
No, it's gliding. It's
not even gliding. I just threw it really hard.
Yeah, but that's still considered gliding. It's because I was unfair when I said flying is controlled falling, which it's not, because flying actually is flying, but gliding is controlled falling. And because, for example, if you look at air gliders, the delta wings or the big wooden ones, either you jump off a high cliff and then you float down, or you get pulled into the sky by another plane and then release and then you start gliding down.
Sure.
And
sure.
This is controlled falling. So you have a measure of control in how fast you fall and the direction of your falling. But in all fairness, flying isn't that, because you have more control than just how fast you fall. The whole idea is that as long as your engine works, you can push yourself up.
Right. Well, you're exploiting air pressure under the lifting surfaces to resist the pull of gravity. So that's the fallacy in the Marxist argument of that's just a social construct, because it's a social construct because it works, because we need it, and
Yeah.
and it's not entirely arbitrary. You can't replace a given social construct with any old nonsense you just make up tomorrow.
Yeah.
It has to follow these rules.
Well, it has to make
are going to be
sense.
elements of its environment.
It has to work.
Sure.
Let's call
Yeah,
it
it has
that.
to work. Exactly. Yeah, it has to work. And if it doesn't work, then that's like the 4-year-old child who is pretending to be an astronaut climbing into a dishwasher, a cardboard box, that the thing came into, drawing a porthole on the side of the cardboard with some marker, and sitting there with a colander on his head, pretending to be an astronaut. It's like, well, it sounds like you're having a good time there, Timothy.
But you're not leaving.
You're not actually an astronaut here, okay? And you don't want to tell the child that he's not hurting anybody. But when an adult does this in wider society and obliges everyone to basically play the game of the emperor with no clothes on, where we're just supposed to pretend that something that isn't happening has happened, it's kind of an offense to reason.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to ask you to entertain the people for a moment. Either that or we have to call it quits because I really need a fast bio break. So I'll be right back.
Oh, well, you want it? Okay, you have a good time.
Yeah, no, that's not going to be a good time.
I don't know.
It's 2
right.
minutes.
I don't know.
Quite logical for me to do this. I was trying to push it off as long as I could. I always have to pee during streams.
You have to eliminate.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
I get it.
I'll be right back.
All right. No problem. All right. Well, I guess I'm just me with you characters. I don't know if you want to everyone wants to collectively do a bio break, or if somebody wants to bring up a topic to talk about or something. I don't know. I'm looking at the chat. If no one says anything, then I'm going to have a bio break. That is a threat. Okay. Well, thanks for your contributions there, Raven. Was there anything I was talking about that somebody wanted me to clarify on? Or is everyone bailing?
Oh. And I'm back.
Wow, that was quick.
Yeah, I just needed to pee. But I always have this problem during live streams. And then again, I always have this problem because I have to pee roughly every hour.
I always I get the other person to talk about something, and then I've got wireless headphones, so I just go and I do that while they're talking.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea.
But it allows me to sneakily have a bio break without anybody really realizing I did it.
Yeah, I should do that. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I didn't even think of that. This has been going on for... Let's just say it's an ongoing joke. It's not funny, but it's an ongoing joke. Anyway, considering the time...
just get the other guy to talk and then you walk off.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
But considering the time, I mean, usually I go on until 1:30 roughly, and that's 7 minutes from now, so maybe it is a good time to end. Unless you...
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. It was
you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome once again. I mean, it's been a while since you've been here. Well, it's the first time you're on this channel, actually. You've been on my other channel.
What?
Yeah, because this is SOT streams, and my other channel, obviously, is Modwayne. Modwayne is just Master of Water. I wish it were true, Mayor Renovatio. I wish it were true. I'm not a Master of Water. Anyway, do you have anything you want to share with the people before we say bye-bye?
I don't know. I think you've allowed me to rant on long enough. I was trying to actually get the people in chat to suggest something. Maybe they had a question.
Usually they pose the questions during. But anyone in the chat wants something asked, said, blah blah blah? I mean, obviously you're welcome to, but today I've been bad at keeping track of the chat. I'm sorry for that.
I'm always bad at it.
Yeah, I have my better days.
I need to get some. need to get some program where I can have the chat break out in like a window on the side, so because I don't want to have the screen monopolize what I'm doing, but I do want to look at the chat at the same time, so it creates a problem. I guess I just gotta have multiple monitors here. Is what I have to do.
Yeah,
I don't know what
that's
to do.
probably it.
Yeah.
But
Son of a bitch.
even if, because now it'll take people like at least half a minute before they start answering if they have a question for us. But I do like to thank you for joining me once again, and it has been a while.
Mm-hmm.
You're more than welcome
No,
to
me too.
rejoin in the future, obviously, and I've said this in the past.
Well, I try to come when you invite me. You invited me sometime earlier, and
Yeah.
had something going on with my family, but you invited me again, and so I showed up. Sure, I'm happy to show up.
Yeah, I mean this time it's more that you said you found it interesting, if I'm not mistaken. And
a little bit.
yeah, no, but that's the thing, because I might not always invite you because I'm really bad at the social media thing. There's a list of people who I constantly could invite, and I hardly ever do because I don't want to impose. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so if people see that I'm talking about something and they might have the feeling they can add something, then yeah, by all means, let me know. You're welcome to join. I mean,
okay, well, that's very kind of you.
Yeah, as I said, had you not, we wouldn't have had this talk, and it was a great one. No, it was. I really enjoyed it. I'm not sure about everyone who was listening, but the fact that so many people are still here, I think other people enjoyed it too, and I assume you enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Of course it is.
That's an assumption, I admit, but still. So yeah, no, it was a good stream.
Mm-hmm.
And okay,
Excellent.
What do you think about Carbon Keep It Cycling? Would it be a good t-shirt to wear? Actually, Anxious, I think it would be a great t-shirt to wear to environmental ideologues, because they.
I just want a big T-shirt that says dihydrogen monoxide with a circle and a line through it. You know, like no more dihydrogen monoxide.
No more dihydrogen. That was a huge thing. I'm amazed by it. I often try. It's a great example of telling people something without them realizing what you're saying, and then they go along with it.
It reveals the shallowness of their thinking.
Yeah,
is what it does. It shows how thin the processing is, and it invalidates the legitimacy of their position, because they're clearly just embarrassed they're being asked something, and they don't know what to say, and so they're just kind of going along with it.
And the worst part is, if nothing else, it proves that majority rule is by definition a terrible idea. Because if you can make the majority say that water is a bad thing, I don't know, but that kind of leaves out any hope for humanity, if I'm honest. Because if those are the people who are deciding our future in the way they are, then our future looks very bleak.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's why you want representative democracy instead of direct democracy for a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's just so you've got somebody who's paying slightly more attention. The danger becomes when you move outside of the sphere of competency of even your representatives, which is one of the things we had with the ACA, unfortunately, the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. I don't mean to digress enormously, but yeah, the system of insurance in the United States that regulates that kind of stuff is incredibly complicated. And legitimately complicated. It actually, the complexity of it actually makes it cheaper. There's many things that make our healthcare system more expensive. The insurance system is not one of them. Unfortunately, the ACA was they boiled it down to like a platonic metals of men thing, where there's like a gold plan and a bronze plan and a silver plan and a platinum plan. And so they took something that had tens of thousands of variables and boiled it down to like 4 programs, which is enormously inefficient, because you have people then covered for things they don't need to be covered for, and people not covered for things they need to be covered for, and you're not giving agency to individuals to be able to determine their liability and so on, which
Well,
they can use to
there's another
dramatically lower their costs.
there's another
It
huge
is.
there's another huge problem with socialized healthcare.
Uh,
And I would love to do this, talk about this, but in all fairness, didn't we just say we're going to quit it?
We were. I said I didn't want to digress. I was just pointing out
listen,
that even the representatives get overwhelmed by things that are complicated.
but seriously, if this is a topic you enjoy talking about too, we could do a stream about this, because there is a huge problem with forced socialized healthcare, especially in a market where the pharma industry is being protected. So you can't compete with them on prices, and at the same time you force people to pay what is needed. And now,
Okay. Well, if you invite me back for that, I'm just going to give everyone a little preview of the shenanigans I'm going to bring to the fore. Medical shortage of medical grade baking soda. I'll say no more.
yeah, good example. Well, a shortage of any plain medical equipment or simple medication.
Huh?
I mean, it's impossible that there's a shortage of it unless
that's the smoking
it's,
gun.
Yeah, fair enough. No, it would be a great one. Yeah, that would be fun. Let's do that.
You can't argue against that one. That's what's so brilliant about it. It's like you can't say, "Oh, it's really complicated to make this. Oh, it's under patent." It's none of these things. It's easy to make. There's no patent.
Yeah,
Why is there a shortage?
because it's better to have a shortage, because that drives the price up.
Maybe. Yeah.
No,
also, only two companies in the United States are allowed to make it.
Yeah. Well, that too, but I think they should be able to have a big enough production. But by flooding the market with more product, I mean, the biggest example of that, and I'm going to say it anyway, even though I said we're going to quit, the biggest example of that is paracetamol. I don't know what the English word for it is.
Yep.
Do you still call it?
No, it's the same term. It's just your pronunciation is different, but it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because I pronounce it correctly. Ah! Anyway.
That's fine.
Yeah. But no, look at paracetamol. I mean, if you buy a pack of paracetamol at the supermarket, most of the money you're spending on that paracetamol is the packaging. And yet still, it's abundant. How come? Because it's free. Everyone can make it. There is no restriction who's allowed to make it. Boom. And all of a sudden the price plummets.
Yep.
But if we then look at epinephrine, the epinephrine pen, the anti-allergy pen, or people with peanut allergy have them, for example.
We also refer to them as EpiPens. Same thing.
EpiPens, yeah, EpiPens. I mean, the epinephrine in an EpiPen is roughly worth 25 cents. Yet the EpiPen costs about $600 to $800.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That doesn't make sense. But why is it? Because only one company is allowed to make them.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sorry, but then you're driving up the price, and these companies are driving up the price. Why are they driving up the price? Because they bloody well can, because they are protected at one side, and they know that because of socialized healthcare, there's a big pot of money on the other side. And if we combine those two things, it will never drop down the prices. It will never drive the prices down. It can only drive prices up. And yet, here we are telling that single-payer healthcare is the best solution. Anyway, we're not going to do that now. We can do that another time. I really, if you're up for it, I know I'm up for it. It's
throw a rock at me when you want me. I'll probably show up.
Yeah, probably. Listen, I often throw. I'm. You know, this is I should be honest. This is something I should blame myself on, because I don't really plan these things. It's Wednesday morning. This is the topic for tonight. For a lot of people, that's not on time. They need more time to prepare or to say, okay, no, that's important. That's where I want to be. So I am to blame for that. That is true. But yeah, no, I'll set it up and I'll let you know. Anyway, to all the people in the chat, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for joining us. And yes, you have seen people being killed by dihydrogen monoxide, or rather they weren't killed by it, they died because of it.
Yes.
Not really the same thing.
Do you know that it's in our children's food? It's true.
Yeah. Well, in all fairness,
It's gotten into almost every facet of our ecosystem. I just want everybody to know that.
100% of
Yeah.
all the murderers in the world
Yeah.
used it.
It's true.
Enough said.
Exactly.
Enough.
Yeah.
Hitler was using it. Just,
Yeah.
putting it out there.
The Nazis.
Oh, and the
Yeah.
Nazis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the worst part is, it is actually true. It means absolutely nothing, but it's true. Oh, and there are actually people who use this sort of argumentation in their the points they want to make. Yeah. But it's an old meme. I mean, it was a meme when memes weren't memes yet.
Yeah.
It was brilliant though.
No, it's my favorite type of subversion. The one where everyone admits what they actually think or what they're how much they're actually paying attention.
Yeah.
Because everyone who's just pretending outs themselves. I love little subversions like that.
It's kind of funny because in the Netherlands there is this guy. I don't really like him that much, but he goes to people on the street and I think he's too obnoxious, but sometimes he makes good points.
Sure.
And he was at a climate change rally, and he didn't talk about CO2. He talked about carbon dioxide.
Yes.
And they had no clue.
Right.
So, for example, I mean, T-shirt with "We got to stop CO2," but no, I agree. But don't you think that we should try to push carbon dioxide because carbon dioxide is good for the plants? Oh yeah, no, that makes sense. And they have a T-shirt on. We got to stop CO2. And how stupid do you think these people are? Trust me, they will surprise you even after you think that.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
It's
a similar figure in Los Angeles. You may be familiar with him. He's got something of a YouTube following. Mark Dice. Yeah, so he's out of LA. This is where I'm from, and he likes to walk around the beach and whatever. And
he used to do that. I haven't seen videos like that from him for a very long time, but he used to do those videos.
Yeah, and he just walks up to people, and he did dihydrogen monoxide and suffrage and a variety of other
Brando.
funny memes.
I love this Brando one. Oh, they want to make Brando for plants because it's what plants crave, and I'm like,
oh right, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I can understand people not knowing it. I mean, not everyone's seen Idiocracy. Fair enough, I can understand that, but they answer it as if they know what the fuck they're talking about.
Exactly,
so what's stopping them to say, oh, really? Oh, I never heard of it. Oh, I didn't know that. But each and every one of them, oh, yeah, no, great idea. No, yeah. Oh, and President...
No, it's also funny when he cites a politician's plans one way or the other, and then inverts who is supporting it. Yeah. So he'll suggest Bernie's plan but call it Trump's, or suggest... Trump's plan, but call it Obama's, something like that. And then people, based on whatever their political biases are, will just rubber stamp anything that's associated with name the politician, without paying any attention to what they're saying.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I might fall for it too, but I'm like, you know what? If you don't know, what's stopping you to say, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you
integrity,
and then we've created a society where integrity is a liability. It's not preferred.
Well, or not important, not taken seriously. Like it's more important that you have kind of a slavish subservience to whatever, rather than have any personal integrity whatsoever. And people that stand on their integrity are generally attacked.
Yeah. Anyway, I am going to call it quits now. I'd really like to have you on once again, and we'll have you on again, mate. You're more than welcome. If you want to join, yeah, we'll do. And everyone in the chat, thank you for joining us. I hope to see you all next time. Ludicrous, I am looking forward to your takedown on the Irish election thing. People started asking me questions on it, and in all fairness, I haven't followed it at all, so you need to put me up to date, please. I'm not sure if Toxic is still out there, but when did you want to do the Martijn live stream? And Anxious, how about soon trying to get another one going when we talk about the beauty that is the Outback? Yeah, you know where you can reach me. Please drop a line if you feel so inclined. For everyone else, like, share, and subscribe in the future if you get to listen to this, which is no one, but let's pretend there are people. Like, share, and subscribe. Criticism, as always, is more than welcome. And I hope to see you all next time. And this is where I'm going to end the stream. Bye-bye, everyone.
Mm-hmm.